The wind howled against the windows as I sat in the cold, empty apartment, a far cry from the beautiful home I once shared with the man I thought I knew. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how my life crumbled, only for me to rise from the ashes. When I met David, he was charming and successful, and made me believe in fairy tales. For over a decade, I devoted my life to him, building what I thought was a solid partnership. But when the cracks began to show, I ignored them. After all, marriage is about trust and patience, right? But trust was a dangerous illusion. The divorce hit like a sudden storm. Unexpected, brutal, and devastating. In court, David played his cards perfectly. With his expensive lawyers and carefully crafted lies, he walked away with everything. The house, the cars, even the savings we'd built together. I was left with nothing but shattered dreams and an unbearable ache of betrayal. Yet the most painful part wasn't the money or the belongings, it was the humiliation. Friends turned cold, and whispers followed me everywhere. People believed his story, that I was the problem. But something felt wrong. David had been too prepared, too calculated. His victory felt rehearsed. So, while the world saw me as broken, I decided to become something else. Relentless. Late nights turned into endless research, digging into every corner of his life. Emails, old records, and forgotten conversations, until I stumbled upon something. A thread in the fabric of his perfect life. And when I pulled it, the entire mask began to unravel. The man who took everything from me was hiding more than anyone could imagine. And what I found next would not only change my life, but destroy his. The days after the divorce were suffocating. I felt like a ghost, drifting through a life that no longer belonged to me. Once buzzing with friends and invitations, my phone now stayed eerily silent. People I had called family for years vanished overnight. David had painted me as the villain, a greedy, ungrateful wife who had driven him to the brink. And, of course, everyone believed him. But one person didn't, Emily, my best friend since college. She was my anchor when the storm threatened to swallow me whole. "Sarah, something isn't adding up," she said one night over wine and tear-stained tissues. David always had that polished image. Too polished. I never trusted him. Her words sparked something inside me, a flicker of suspicion that grew into a fire. I began to replay every odd moment from our marriage. The mysterious late-night phone calls, the unexplained business trips, and the sudden changes in his finances. Then, there was his lawyer, Robert Chase, a man as slick as they come. In court, he had torn me apart without mercy. But what gnawed at me was his familiarity with David. Their glances, their unspoken understanding. It felt personal, not professional. Determined to understand how I had lost everything so easily, I started with the financial records from our marriage. I couldn't afford a lawyer, so I dug through every statement and receipt on my own. Hours turned into days, days into weeks, until I found the first crack, a wire transfer, a large sum of money sent to an unknown account just 2 days before David filed for divorce. The name on the account didn't ring a bell, but the timing was too convenient. I brought it to Emily. "It's a start," she said, her eyes burning with the same determination I felt. "But let's find out where that money went." Through a mutual friend who worked in finance, we traced the account to a real estate property in another state, a penthouse. David had never mentioned owning property outside our home, and we certainly hadn't bought it together. But the real bombshell came when we discovered who was living there. A woman and a child. My heart stopped. Every beat felt like a thunderclap in my chest. Was this his secret family? His mistress? My hands shook as Emily squeezed my arm. "Sarah, you need to see this." She handed me a photo from the building's security footage. It was David, holding a little girl's hand. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. And the woman beside them? It was Rebecca Stanton, his lawyer's paralegal. Suddenly, everything clicked. The swift divorce, the relentless court battle, the fabricated lies about me. David hadn't just been preparing to leave me. He had been building another life behind my back, one that he was willing to destroy me to protect. But he made one fatal mistake. He underestimated me. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The photo of David, Rebecca, and the child felt like a knife through my chest. But pain quickly turned into something sharper, resolve. I wasn't just going to survive his betrayal. I was going to expose him. With Emily by my side, we dove headfirst into uncovering the truth. First, I needed proof that David had hidden assets during the divorce. According to the settlement, he declared everything. But that penthouse and his secret life? Nowhere on record. We decided to hit him where he'd never expect through Rebecca. Emily, ever resourceful, discovered Rebecca's social media accounts. On the surface, they were spotless. No tags, no photos with David, nothing that tied her to him publicly. But through a bit of digging, we found something. A private blog under a pseudonym. It was filled with poetic entries about her secret love and their beautiful daughter. She never mentioned David's name, but one post stood out. You promised me that soon the battles would end. Soon. She'd be out of our lives, and we could be a real family. That she was me. The post was dated a week before David filed for divorce. My hands trembled as I saved screenshots. Emily's voice was tight with anger. This isn't just infidelity, Sarah. It's premeditation, fraud, perjury. We needed more. So I did something that made my heart race. I decided to confront Rebecca directly. I found her leaving the law office one evening, her guard down. Rebecca, I called, my voice cold and steady. She froze, her eyes wide with panic. We need to talk. I don't know what she stammered. Don't. I cut her off, holding up my phone with the screenshots of her blog. I know everything. About you. About David. About your daughter. Her face drained of color. Please, you don't understand. Then make me understand. I said firmly. Because if you don't, I'll let the courts and the world figure it out. She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. David, he said you'd never find out. He promised me that he would handle everything. He told me you were dangerous. I almost laughed. A bitter, humorless sound. Dangerous? No, Rebecca. I'm not dangerous. But I will be your worst nightmare if you don't tell me the truth. Her defenses cracked. He has another account. Offshore. He moved everything there before filing for divorce. It's in the name of a shell company, North Bay Holdings. Bingo. Emily and I worked through the night, using Rebecca's tip to search financial databases. North Bay Holdings wasn't easy to crack, shell companies never are. But Emily's friend in finance came through again. A whistleblower leak from a foreign bank connected North Bay Holdings to a massive account, $2.7 million. It was David's money. My money. The money he claimed didn't exist. But we didn't stop there. Digging further, we found that Robert Chase, David's lawyer, was a silent partner in North Bay Holdings. He hadn't just represented David, he helped him commit fraud. Now we had enough to bury them both. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted justice. But justice, I realized, required patience and a little cunning. So I set a trap. I arranged a meeting with David under the guise of closure. I told him I was willing to settle the remaining disputes peacefully. He agreed, smug as ever, thinking I was finally broken. But I wasn't alone. I had secretly tipped off an investigative journalist and a friend from the district attorney's office about everything I'd uncovered. The DA needed something concrete, a confession. And David, arrogant as ever, walked right into it. Over coffee, he leaned back with that insufferable smirk. See, Sarah? Fighting me only brought you misery. You should have known better. I stared him down, my voice calm but cold. You're right. I should have known you'd rather burn me to the ground than face your sins. He chuckled. Too late now. The courts sided with me. But you lied to the courts, I said softly, tilting my phone on the table, recording every word. His smile faltered. What are you? I pressed play on my phone, and Rebecca's recorded confession played out, her voice clear and unmistakable. David's face drained of color. You set me up? No, I said, leaning in with a cold smile. You set yourself up. I just pressed record. The doors to the cafe opened, and in walked two people, a reporter with a camera rolling and a district attorney with an arrest warrant. David shot up from his seat, but the DA's voice cut through. David Coleman, you're under arrest for fraud, perjury, and conspiracy. The story exploded. News outlets ran headlines. Millionaire husband exposed for fraudulent divorce scheme. Secret family offshore accounts, and lies, the divorce scandal of the year. David's assets, including that hidden $2.7 million, were frozen. His lawyer, Robert Chase, was disbarred and charged as an accomplice. And me? I didn't just get half of what I was owed. I got everything. The house, the cars, the savings, even the penthouse. The court, furious with David's deception, awarded me full restitution plus damages. But the sweetest victory, walking out of that courthouse free, vindicated and whole. As reporters swarmed, I simply said, "He took everything from me." But in the end, I took everything back. The courtroom buzzed with tension, a storm of whispers and camera flashes as the scandal of the year reached its boiling point. At the center of it all stood David, his polished mask finally cracking under the weight of his lies. His once confident smirk had vanished, replaced by something I had never seen before, fear. I sat across from him, my heart pounding but my gaze steady. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about justice. The district attorney stood, holding up a thick file. "Your Honor, the evidence we are about to present demonstrates a calculated scheme of deception, perjury, and financial fraud orchestrated by the defendant, David Coleman." The courtroom doors opened, and in walked Rebecca Stanton. Gasps echoed through the room. She looked pale but determined as she took the stand. "Miss Stanton," the DA began, "can you confirm your relationship with Mr. Coleman?" Rebecca's voice was soft but clear. "I was his partner. We have a child together. And I helped him hide assets during the divorce." David shot up from his seat. "Rebecca, what are you doing?" he barked, his voice raw with panic. She didn't flinch. "Telling the truth, something you never could." The DA continued. "Did Mr. Coleman instruct you to assist in concealing funds through a shell company named North Bay Holdings?" Rebecca nodded. "Yes. He told me it was the only way to protect our future. He said his wife didn't deserve a penny." The room fell into stunned silence. The DA turned to me. "Miss Coleman," I smiled. I had already reverted to my maiden name. "Sarah Parker, you uncovered these accounts on your own. Can you share how?" I rose, my voice steady but cold. David underestimated me. He thought I'd crumble. But I followed his lies to the very end. And when I found his secret life, I decided to destroy his. David's face twisted in rage. "You set me up," he snapped. I turned, my voice like steel. "No, David. You set yourself up the day you decided to betray me." The judge, his voice firm, declared, "I have seen enough. The evidence of perjury, fraud, and concealment of assets is overwhelming. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Sarah Parker. All hidden assets will be seized and awarded as restitution. Mr. Coleman, you are hereby charged with perjury and financial fraud. Bailiff, take him into custody." The gavel struck. David's world collapsed in a single heartbeat. As the bailiff approached, he shouted, his voice laced with desperation, "Sarah, you'll regret this." But I met his eyes, calm, victorious and free. "No, David. I'll finally sleep in peace." As he was led away in handcuffs, cameras flashed, and reporters clamored for statements. But I didn't need to say anything. My silence, my victory, was louder than any headline. I walked out of that courtroom with my head high. Not because I had taken everything he had, but because I had taken back everything he tried to steal from me. The air outside the courthouse felt different, crisp, clean, and filled with the kind of freedom that comes from closing a chapter you never thought would end. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but I kept walking. This wasn't their story. It was mine, and it was finally over. Or so I thought. The media storm around David's downfall was relentless. His face was everywhere, news reports, online articles, even trending hashtags like #JusticeForSarah and #ColemanExposed. His company crumbled overnight, clients fleeing the scandal like rats from a sinking ship. As for Rebecca, she accepted a plea deal, testifying against David in exchange for a reduced sentence. She reached out once, a short, cautious message. "I'm sorry for my part in all of this. I was blinded by his promises. I hope you can find peace." I didn't respond. Not because I hated her, no. I pitied her. She, too, had been a victim of his lies. But forgiveness, that would come on my timeline, not hers. The courts awarded me everything David tried to hide. The $2.7 million in offshore accounts, the house, and yes, even the penthouse where he built his lies. But no amount of money could return what he had taken from me. My trust, my years, my peace of mind. So I chose to rebuild, not from his ashes, but from my strength. I sold the penthouse, the place that had been a monument to his betrayal, and used the money to start something new, a foundation supporting women navigating high-conflict divorces and financial abuse. I named it Phoenix House, because rising from ruin was something I knew intimately. With my financial future secure, I turned to healing the relationships David had tried to destroy. My friends, some of whom had distanced themselves during the divorce, reached out with apologies. A few I welcomed back, but others I left in the past. Betrayal taught me the value of boundaries. But Emily never left my side. She was my anchor through every storm. And when I offered her a partnership to help run Phoenix House, she didn't hesitate. "You survived the fire," she said with a smile. "Now let's help others do the same." David's sentencing came 6 months later. 5 years for financial fraud, and 2 for perjury. He sat before the judge, his arrogance shattered, his power gone. As the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement, I stood not for him but for me. "I once believed marriage meant giving everything to someone you trust," I began, my voice steady, but David taught me that trust, when broken, can destroy everything you are. Yet from that destruction, I found something more powerful. Myself. I paused, letting my words settle. "So David, you didn't just lose money or reputation. You lost me. And that is something you'll never get back." I walked out without looking back, because his story wasn't mine anymore. The road ahead wasn't easy. Healing rarely is. But I discovered something far more valuable than revenge: peace. In time, I found joy in the small things. Lazy mornings with coffee, laughter with friends, and the quiet strength that comes from surviving something that was meant to break you. I never sought to erase my scars. They became part of my story, a reminder of the battle I fought and won. And when the world asked if I had any regrets, my answer was simple. Only that I didn't leave sooner. But the woman I became, she was worth every storm. The chapter with David ended. But my story, it was just beginning. Because sometimes, the greatest revenge is living a life they can never destroy. As I stand here today, looking back on the chaos, the heartbreak, and the battle I never asked for, I feel something I never expected: peace. David thought he could bury me under his lies, but he only planted a seed. And from that darkness, I grew stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. He took everything, but in the end, I found something far more valuable than money or revenge: myself. My journey wasn't just about exposing his secrets. It was about reclaiming my power. And in doing so, I didn't just win a legal battle, I won my life back. To anyone listening who's ever felt broken, betrayed, or lost, remember this: the fire that tried to consume you can be the same fire that forges you. David's chapter in my life is over. But my story, my real story, has only just begun. And the best part? I'm writing it on my terms.